Lee Hall's life was just a nightmare. She recently caught her boyfriend with another girl, in addition in a pub. Where she worked part-time, there were always some scoundrels, but one day this girl just got drunk and on the way home got into an accident that cut her life short. The next moment she opened her eyes and realized that she was alive, but when she approached the mirror out of habit, she saw that she had turned into a monster. She also did not recognize her room, and then the maid knocked and explained that she was the owner of the estate and her name was now Alexa. The girl thought that princesses were usually beautiful, and now she could be called a fraud for such an appearance. She decided that she was cursed, but she did not understand why she was cursed and why she had already been reborn. Then, not into a normal body, the girl immediately burst into tears, asking what was wrong with her face, while also repeating that it was not her face. Then, Alexa decided to pull herself together and, looking in the mirror again, admitted that she was a monster. The maid tried to contradict her, but she said that she also had eyes, and also asked the maid not to be frightened. She promised that she would not do anything to the frightened girl. But at the same time, she thought that she still lost her mind, and the maid suggested that the mistress was simply shocked by the visit of Lady Ariel, who was Alexa's older sister and the princess of this country. The maid recalled that she had come a few days ago, and since then Alexa had been very sad and often cried in her room. However, now the mistress was more interested in why the princess was her sister and not her. Although she understood that her appearance interfered with this, the maid then went on to explain that Alexa was still the second princess in Felipe's kingdom. She's also the daughter of Camilla's concubine, who died when the girl was only 6 years old, and when Alexa was 7 years old, she was cursed at the Canetti estate because she drove away a witch who asked for shelter on a rainy day. Before, she was very beautiful, and everyone considered her the second beauty after Mrs. Ariel, and she is also 18 years old now. The maid also reminded that despite everything, Alexa is also engaged, and her fiancé, Marquis Herman Belford, commander of the Royal Army at the same time, he is so handsome that he is called the flower of the empire, and in general he is the most enviable groom. Alexa did not understand why this marquis would marry her, and the maid explained that this was a contract engagement that would most likely be dissolved. After all, everyone knows that Princess Ariel and the marquis are dating, and that he hates Alexa. The maid explained that this was because she heads over heels in love and clung to him like a leech. She loved him so much that she even made a deal with her father, the Duke, king, and destroyed all the enemies of the kingdom. Alexa was so strong that she was even called the guardian of death, and if not for her, the kingdom would have lost its last war. But also behind her back, she was called a monster, a dirty washcloth, and a stalker of men. Alexa knew that there was nothing she could do about it for now, but she still had to try to survive here. Time passed, but the girl still could not get used to her image and body overgrown with hair at the same time. In her previous life, she was a nobody. She did not have any features or talents, but at the same time she did not know anything about this. Alex also didn't want to die a second time to get rid of it, and she came up with a brilliant idea. Alexa called Lily's maid to her and asked her to bring sugar liquid. She quickly complied with the request, although she did not understand why the mistress needed it, and then she decided to show what she was going to do. She began to applied the liquid to her hand and put a piece of cloth on top. After waiting a few minutes, she made a sharp jerk of the maid was very frightened at the sight of this, and even decided that her mistress had gone mad and was now trying to harm herself. But then Alexa showed me a clean area of the skin and asked me not to worry. After that, she asked Lily to do the same all over the rest of her body, while tearing off the fabric sharply so that it would not hurt. Still, the pain was felt with such primitive hair removal, and after a few hours of endless pain, Alexa did not want anything, but then she looked at herself in the mirror again and was glad that now she, at least, looked like a person. Lily was only surprised because she did not know before that it was possible to remove hair in this way and thought that it was magic. Instead of explaining, the lady only asked to call all the workers, and soon a small group of people appeared in front of her. Alexa was surprised that she had so few servants, only 10 people. But she was a princess and needed more servants. At the same time, the servants could not believe that this was their mistress, because she had a lot of hair and thought that this was not the real Alexa, but she only asked for silence and explained that she called them to get advice and then asked which of them was the cook. The man in the white uniform, little worried, admitted that it was him, and Alexa wondered if he had just taunted her. He immediately began to I apologize, and the mistress told him that all her dishes were too greasy, and the cook admitted that Mrs. Ariel advised him to do so. The girl thought this was a little suspicious, but now she decided to change everything, and the cook continued to claim that her sister tried very hard. Alexa did not understand why Ariel's words were more important to this cook than the orders of his immediate mistress, as if he was not afraid of her at all. Then she decided to teach them all a lesson and show who their real mistress was, and then ordered everyone to listen to her carefully. She said that if she heard any objections again, she would not forgive it, and punishment would follow. The servants had no choice but to obey, for they knew that their lives might depend on it. Meanwhile, Alexa realized that monsters have their advantages, and then decided to tell the servants what they should do from now on. First, she called her hairdresser Jen and admitted that she was not made of stone, no matter how scary she looked. She is an 18-year-old girl, and she also has feelings. So she wants people to see her as a person, not a monster at this time. Lily also came up, and both maids apologized to the mistress for thinking only in terms of prejudice all this time. They were sorry that they had hurt the mistress, and she advised that they should try to do their job well first. They promised to do everything possible to make Princess Alexia the most beautiful girl in the kingdom. They began by forcing the lady to exercise, which she was not very happy with but agreed, and from that day on she began to continue to play sports as well as take care of herself, which she was helped by the maids for 3 months. Alexa also learned how to manage the estate and had a hand in the financial side of the issue. As she looked at the papers, she noticed that the expense was too high, especially for food, as if someone wanted to ruin her mistress's health with it. She also guessed that it was her sister Ariel, and now she was trying to understand what she was trying to achieve. One evening, the respected princess went to visit her sister at the Pianthea Theatre. On request of the Duke, he could not stand aside and not notice such changes in Mrs. Alexia, because she got rid of the hair and refused the offered food. Herdon was worried, but he couldn't believe that the curse was gone, and now Ariel had to go and check on her the next day. While Alexa was training, her rival Knight began to give up quite quickly. The mistress even shouted at him to get up, but he wasn't as strong as she was because she was a monster. But then he covered his mouth with his hand, realizing that he had blurted out too much, and Alexa decided to teach him a lesson. In response, she immediately attacked him again with her sword, but did not wound him, but simply brought him unconscious. It only took her one blow to do this, and she didn't even believe that such a thing was possible. Then she realized that there was magic in her sword. Now she understood why everyone was afraid of Alexia and decided to try something else. Immediately swinging her sword, after a sudden movement from the power of the sword, the statue split into 2 parts, and the girl realized that even a stone could cut. She felt like a superhero now, and at that moment the maid reported to her that Princess Ariel had arrived. Alexa did not understand why she visited her so early, because she usually comes once every 2 or 3 months. She also guessed that this was not without reason, and she needed to be careful. And then she went to meet her first father. She apologized to the princess for waiting, and Ariel, seeing Her sister in human form was very surprised. Alexa herself understood that such a thing was hard to believe and decided to introduce herself in a new way, giving her name and title. Then she explained what had happened to her was magic, but Ariel still couldn't understand that her sister had been able to break the curse. Alexa also explained that it would take a long time to talk about everything, but confirmed that the curse was gone and now she is no longer a monster, but Alexa, the younger sister of Princess Ariel and the daughter of the king. But the first Princess still had doubts and she needed proof that her sister was real, and then Alexa barely pushed the cup and smashed it to pieces, saying that only she could do this now. Ariel believed and was happy. Because she was so worried that she was constantly sitting in the room and did not go anywhere, she even burst into tears, but Alexa could not believe her tears because she did not yet know what kind of relationship between them was. And to win this battle, she had to build a defense without suspicion and pretend that she was also very happy. To see her sister after that, she thanked Ariel for her feelings and expressed that hoped that now they would do everything together. At the same time, Alexa hugged her sister, but she still felt a little uncomfortable, but tried not to show it. And then to prove her benevolence, the princess invited her sister to go with her to the castle. A week had passed since Alexa had arrived at the palace with her sister, but she had hardly seen her since that day. Ariel constantly made excuses, saying that she was very busy with business, so there was not enough time for a meeting at all, and the entire royal palace was hard at work on preparations for the king's birthday, which would take place in 3 days. At the same time, the girl continued to play the sports and also spent time on vacation. She wondered if her sister would appear at the reception, and then one of Rachel's bespectacled maids knocked on her door and reported that Ariel would be serving her from that day on, as her mistress sent clothes for the reception and Alexa had to choose what she liked. The girls carefully looked at each outfit, and they all seemed to her as if from the last century. The maid noticed the mistress's reaction and explained that Ariel had picked up all the outfits that are in fashion now. Then she also asked Alexi if she didn't like something then. "I choose something and thank the princess and not grumble at this point." Jan and Lily intervened, telling the maid that she did not dare to behave so rudely with Mrs. Alexa, but the maid in glasses not only did not calm down, but also said that the guest should address her politely in the royal palace. These words made Alexa quite angry, and Rachel even worried about what would happen to the palace after she arrived. At this moment, she received a strong slap for daring to speak in a rude and arrogant tone to the mistress. After that, Alexa hoped that this would be enough to remind her who she was and where this maid belonged. She also ordered Rachel to tell all the servants in the palace that they should respect both princesses of their kingdom. Soon, the day of the party came, and Alexa wore a new tailored dress to the reception, which Jimmy the tailor appreciated very much. He admitted that it was much more beautiful than those ancient rags, and she hoped that would be enough to make Ariel lose her temper. The tailor even cried because he could not imagine that the lady could look so beautiful when he remembered their first meeting. Alexa then approached him and explained that she was from the royal family, but she did not have enough money. But if he sews a dress for her from the best fabrics, it will help a lot in advancing his career. And now Jimmy was admiring his work, and the maids at this time called the mistress into the office. Hall explained that everything was ready. As she entered, she was solemnly announced as Alexa de Pelia Dwight III, the second princess of the kingdom of Felipe. The guests were immediately frightened that a monster had come here, but then they saw a very beautiful lady in front of them, and they were astonished. Alexa walked down the path and politely greeted His Majesty, wishing him health and prosperity from the goddess Demetria. The king was also very surprised because he knew that his second daughter was a monster completely covered in fur. However, he quickly pulled himself together and thanking her and said that she looked great today. People in the hall did not stop whispering that it was the princess. because they could not believe that it was really her. But then the king clapped his hands and demanded silence, and then announced that his second daughter had been freed from the curse. He also explained that this was a blessing from the goddess Demetria and a sign that shows the bright future of their country. Meanwhile, Alexa noticed that the king, even in such a situation, was able to use his daughter to turn everything in his favor, but without expressing her suspicions, she only asked her father's permission to go to her sister. The king gave permission, and just as she was about to leave, her gaze rested on the man who had just entered the hall. He was a tall young man with macho meche, black hair and black eyes, as well as a rather handsome face. She also noticed that their eyes crossed for a moment, and from this look, she realized that perhaps they knew each other at that moment. Another blonde guy came up from behind and grabbed her hand, and quite strongly, Alexa shouted at him to let him go, but he didn't listen and continued to hold her, trying to get her attention. Then the girl jerked her hand sharply to free herself. While she was angry with him, the guy apologized and introduced himself as her younger brother, Wilhelm, and explained that the matter was urgent. Then he nodded to the wrong young black-haired man and explained that it was the Duke of Balon and that he was cursed. 30 years ago, the late king married the daughter of the devil in order to keep the peace of the kingdom. Though she was only half a demon, she was executed for her cruelty and ruthlessness, and the Duke is the son of this woman, and no one is sure that he does not belong to the royal blood. Wilhelm explained that the black hair and eyes belonged to demons, and no one knew when the devil's side would get the better of him. At the same time, Alexa noticed that she had only known her brother for 10 minutes, but it was easier for her to talk to him than with Ariel. She thought that the boy had an inferiority complex because of the arch. Nothing more, nothing less. The girl also realized that her father needs her only for political purposes, because the youngest son is busy only with fantasies and suspicions now. The biggest problem remains Ariel, who hides her true identity. The first princess just came up and asked if her brother had finished and decided to take her sister. With her, she explained that she wanted to introduce her to many people and first introduced her childhood friend Manuela. Then more girls came up, wanting to get to know Alexa, knowing how much she had suffered because of the curse. They also noticed that she was wearing a peculiar dress, the cut of which they had never seen before. At that moment, Alexa felt like a monkey that they came to see at the zoo at the same time. Ariel whispered to her friends not to be so carried away with discussing the princess, especially her dress. The girl now realized that her sister wanted to put her in a bad light and make all the aristocrats laugh at her, and since she is in the zoo now, she can only destroy her cage and escape. Then she pours the drink out of the glass on the girl, who to laugh at her outfit. She immediately screamed because her dress was very expensive and her designer worked on it for a very long time. But Alexa then hinted that that girl without this dress is an ordinary simpleton inside. Then she asked who she was and also showed off her dress, which was worth seeing. Alexa also grabbed it by the hem, and it immediately tore a little, and she explained that she had her power without the dress. The second princess understood that everyone was here anyway for the sake of the show, so she did not hesitate to behave like this. At the same time, she decided that people should choose whose side they were on, her or the first princess, and that girl, Alexa, asked to send an invoice for the drenched dress to the palace, and that she would repay her with interest. The frightened girl was frightened and asked to stop. She got up and ran away from the hall. At the same time, Alexa noticed that her sister does not openly express her position, but prefers to stay away. A gathers allies and is about to attack her, and if the second princess fails to defend herself, she will be eliminated from the game. Alexa thought that it was time to leave herself when someone called the princess, and when she looked back, she recognized the description that it was the Marquis of Belford, the same groom she could not live without. And now she was able to see he lives. Amon was heading in her direction, and she thought it was towards him, but he passed by and approached. Ariel, who was standing next to her, the first princess, was happy to see him and also decided to invite the Marquis to dance. Now Alexa realized that she had stolen the fiancé whom her younger sister loved so much. The relationship between them became clearer, and to survive in this world, a girl needs to protect the one she has moved into approaching the couple. Alexa said that she had decided to officially break off her engagement to the Marquis today. People in the hall began to whisper in surprise, and the second princess explained that everyone already knew that these two were suitable for each other. Therefore, if she is an uninvited guest in the heart of the Mark of Belford, then it is best for her to leave. Despite the criticism, the aristocrats were still surprised by what was happening, but Alexa was sure that now it was her turn to approach Ariel. She seemed to insist that she thought the same way, but the princess was in no hurry to answer. Therefore, Alexa took her silence as consent and again repeated that her engagement to Belford was broken. Then she also added that everyone present here would be witnesses to this, after which she decided to leave. This was only Alexa's first step. She still had a long way to go, but now she felt free. The girl left the hall into the fresh air and breathed a sigh of relief, as it seemed very stuffy to her in the hall. Then she leaned over the railing to look and noticed that the height of the balcony was quite decent. Alexa thought about the fact that if she fell from such a height, she could die, and remembered how it happened last time. Then it occurred to her that if they died here, they could move to another world again. But the girl has just started her journey here, so it is worth discarding such thoughts. Alexa needed to get herself together, and she was so lost in thought that she did not notice how she accidentally fell over the vents herself. At that moment she felt frightened and had already said goodbye to life. But then she noticed that she did not fall further. When she opened her eyes, she saw that she had been grabbed by the hand of the Duke of Balon, then brought her back to the balcony, all the while staring into her eyes. Alexa herself felt ashamed of what had happened and quickly thanked her and rushed to run away from there. She stopped around the corner to catch her breath. She wondered how long the Duke had been standing there and whether he had heard her speak of herself in the third person. He had also seen her waving her arms and acting like a pterodactyl, and now she hoped they would never meet. After the reception ended, Alexa returned to her normal life, with almost everyone discussing the end of the engagement. People also said that Ariel and the mayoress never even met after that, and the first princess did not attend any social events and did not arrange receptions, but Alexa didn't care about that. She had only one problem. She was so bored that she just went crazy, thinking. She unconsciously banged her head on the table, after which a lump popped out, and Lily immediately began to apply a wet towel. However, the bruise did not bother her at all. Alexa was also worried about the meeting with the Duke, which ended in complete disgrace. The second princess even began to think again about the need to die and move to another world again. A few days later, a hunting competition was organized in which the mayors and the Duke also participated. Alexa thought that this could somehow entertain her, but when she got there, she thought that life had set her up again. The girl learned about these competitions a few days before from the maid Lily, and she explained that this is a traditional event that involves the entire royal family and aristocrats, and there are also men and women who support them, and the team that brings the biggest and most expensive loot is the winner. But that's not all of the males. Hunter does not have a woman to support him. He will be disqualified at that moment. Alexa found such a time boring and meaningless, but she decided to participate anyway because she was part of the royal family and she just needs to do it. In addition, Lily and Jen tried very hard to prepare their mistress for this day by getting her a special costume from the hunters. The girl believed that These maids were sometimes annoying, but at the same time, they could be relied on. At this time, King Raphael III solemnly declared the hunting competitions open. He also announced that the Archduke would also take part, and Alexa knew that she would have to meet him again. The king turned to Balon and acknowledged that with high presence their event was becoming more sophisticated than Raphael wished the assembled aristocrats, that the goddess Demetria would help them to win this time. The winner will receive a sword as well as a monetary reward and glorify his name and the name of his family. After that, the king asked everyone to get ready, and the male hunters began to choose women to support. When Alexa had already gotten used to the atmosphere here, Ariel appeared and asked her sister who she would support. The second princess didn't know what to say. She had to pull herself together to prevent herself from being attacked. Then she asked in response, asking, who Ariel would support? Alex also added that everyone already knows this, but at the same time, the human heart is very changeable. After that, the girl heard that Mr. Liss and Miss Lashu had become partners, and it looked like everything would go without incident this year. At this point, the king was approached by his son Wilhelm, asking if the royal archduke and the family could also take part. The boy added that their noble archduke could also try his hand. Alexia was surprised by this, was because she had heard that the men of the royal family were only watching the competitions, but King Raphael thought it was a good idea because he never liked the royal family standing aside. The second princess looked at the prince, blinded by envy, and the king, who stubbornly ignored it. The girl could not believe that the duke would agree to take part, because most likely no one would support him, although at the same time, people say that he has fire magic, and she heard that his hands were tied so that he would not burn anyone alive. On the other hand, tying the hands of the second princess did not seem fair because it was more like torture, and while Alexa wanted to avoid the duke for as long as possible, she couldn't just pretend she hadn't heard it. In all this time, the hunters had already chosen their assistants, and only the Marquis of Bedford and the Duke of Balon were left alone. However, when the name of the Marquis was called, it was time for him to choose a couple. The girls simultaneously began to express their desire. Bellfire just looked at them silently, and the host again asked who else wanted to support him. The girls took the hint and fell silent while they all stared at the second princess, who couldn't understand why they were doing this. Alexa herself was not going to volunteer to support her ex-fiancé and Vanson. After a minute of waiting, the aristocrat Lady Cecile was appointed for Belford to support him. Alexa had expected that the mayors would be appointed Ariel, but when she heard that it was not her, she was very surprised. She looked at her sister, who was even a little sad. But she didn't say a word, and the second princess was even pleased that she was not the only one who hides her real feelings. After that, the name of Balon Didestar was called, and the duke was now the last to be unsupported. All the ladies were silent, for no one wanted to be his partner, and the other hunters knew it. The girls still did not dare, because they were afraid that in the end, they could be punished by a barrage of fire. And then Alexa herself volunteered to be the duke's partner, which surprised everyone around. Quite a lot. The king was especially shocked, telling her that this was not the time or place for jokes, and asked her to apologize to the duke, but she said that she was not joking at all, although she had no idea why she was doing it. Also, to confirm her words, the girl swore by the name Dwight that she was completely sincere. Alexa thought for a moment that it was because she saw herself in the duke's eyes, because they were similar in many ways. Alan was also shunned and rejected by everyone, while he was also ridiculed by everyone, so she gave him her hand. At that moment, Wilhelm also called out to her, but she asked her brother not to distract her and continued to do his own thing. The host also asked the duke if he was ready to accept Princess Alexa Rashi's partner, but he was in no hurry to answer, and the girl mentally begged him not to think and take her hand, because if he refused, he would be tortured. And then Balon gave his hand in response and declared that he accepted the princess as his support partner, and the king at this time also decided not to resort to the tradition of punishing some participants. After that, His Majesty Raphael announced the completion of the selection of partners and the beginning of the hunt. And when the king announced the start of the competition, the teams dispersed to prepare for the hunt. Alexa again noticed that aristocrats were heading towards her, and this became a frequent and annoying phenomenon for her, although she understood that she had to endure incalculable friction as before, but now she decided to do things differently. The aristocrats asked if she really felt nothing more for the Marquis, and she confirmed it. Moreover, Alexa pointed out that at first she did not feel anything, and this is all a BAL calculation. Her sister, the first princess, could not decide to marry so quickly, so she was engaged to the Marquis in her place. The girl explained that she had kept it for Ariel, then asked her not to disturb her anymore because she needed to prepare when the others had gone. Ariel appeared and asked her sister why she had not chosen Belford, but she asked the first princess the same thing, adding that it looked as if she was indifferent to him. Ariel still insisted on getting an answer as to why Alexa decided to choose this black-eyed man for herself, because he has cursed only the second princess. Because she is cursed, and she was also a monster, her sister objected to her, that if she had been, she would not have returned her to the palace, and then turned around and left Alexa, did not catch up with her, but went to her tent where the Duke was already preparing. She was completely ready, and suddenly she noticed that Balon now reminded her more of an obedient puppy. The Duke decided to ask why she decided to become his partner. He then explained to the princess that he thought she hated him as much as everyone else. Alexa understood what he meant, remembering the evening when she abruptly ran away from him. Balon also decided that she was just forced to be next to him, but the girl explained that this was not the case. She understood that this man was used to being surrounded by hatred, and now she asked him not to avoid her, but the Duke still felt embarrassed, and then mounted his horse and declared that it was time for him to go while he was still there. Alexa asked his permission to cheer him up and handed him her handkerchief. Balon gave her his hand, and the girl began to tie a handkerchief around him, but below the elbow, since his biceps turned out to be very wide, although the scarf did not fit there either. And then Alexa came up with the idea to tie a scarf on his bow. The Duke thanked her for her care, and wondered if she always did it with other people. The princess did not hear him, for he only muttered his question and asked again. Balon did not repeat his question, but only politely thanked her again for her support after he galloped away. And Alexa remembered the rumors about him that he was just a cruel demon, but noticed that he looked quite innocent at the same time. The princess also decided that in this case, hunting at competitions should be an enjoyable activity. Her mood was lifted by today's sun and a fresh, encouraging breeze. She was also glad that she was not wearing a tight dress now, and she could wear quite comfortable pants. The princess was in a great mood, and she didn't even need money, and sword as a reward. The only thing that would make her even happier was the shock on the king's face when she and the Duke won, walking like this. She heard a rustle in the bushes and immediately aimed her bow. A young deer peeked out of there, which was so cute that she couldn't shoot it sitting down. The girl stretched out her hand to him and asked that the animal should not be afraid, since she was not going to kill him. But Alexia also understood that she did not want to waste an arrow on this baby because she was aiming for the Dante Aramea, the strongest prey at that moment. Her horse snorted and began to run away, but the girl couldn't understand what had happened. The deer also rushed after the horse. Alexa was left all alone, and now she had to go further on foot. Soon she saw a huge tree in front of her and decided to climb to the top of it because it made her feel freer. She liked the view from the heights very much, and she did not understand now why she had not thought of climbing here earlier. She also decided to take a closer look at where there might be a rare prey, and saw several guys nearby. She realized that they were setting traps, and one of them boasted that he had learned it from an experienced blacksmith. The boys also discussed that the Duke should pass here, and worried that it wouldn't be so easy to get rid of him. They also assumed that someone else might be caught, but they would also be interested in seeing that. Meanwhile, Syrian realized that these guys were going to cheat and decided to teach them a lesson. The next moment, the guys saw the princess's boots in front of them, with which she knocked one down. Then she stood over the rest of the frightened guys and demanded to explain themselves to her. They introduced themselves as Lord Azel, Lord Heleno, Lord Hiano. But the princess did not intend to talk to them for a long time. She just decided to ask if she knew who the Duke was paired with, and then one of them said that she would not get away with it even if she was a princess. The downed guy also added that his father is Count Manuela, who will not tolerate this. Then Alexa realized that this young man, Rapida, and her sister's friend, were relatives especially, since they even looked alike. But the girl also decided not to leave it unpunished and to scare the impudent man by taking out a dagger and throwing it in his direction. The dagger got stuck in the ground near his head, and the other two frightened promised the princess to tell everything. They admitted that there were still traps near the northwestern part of the forest, but they do not know where exactly, since they were not the ones who set them. Alexia was surprised that they were still going to catch the Duke while not knowing where the traps were. But the guys also admitted that they had sent a spy after him. And to the prince, the accompanying servant of this guy was actually his lord. Then the princess went to look for the Duke, without fear of falling into a trap herself. She was only praying that everything would be all right, and then she found herself worrying too much about him. And Alexa didn't even know the Duke properly, but at the same time she was very worried about what was happening. The girl thought for a moment that it was because she liked him, but immediately began to convince herself otherwise. She explained to herself that she simply did not want to put her partner in danger by going further than the princess felt a little rested and did not give up in search of the Duke. And then she felt her foot sink into something soft. And then the other two Alexas realized that it was a swamp, and since she was caught, she screwed up badly and tried to get out with a sword. But her weapon quickly disappeared into the viscous liquid, and she continued to sink deeper and deeper into the borderland to find the borderland. And the other two Alexas felt as though they had been screwed with an deeper at this moment. Alexa did not understand what the point of rebirth was, because she had to find a trap. But she fell into it. Now she felt not only like a beast and an outcast, but also unlucky. But when the swamp reached her neck, the sinking stopped. The girl spent about an hour in this position, while in her head she went through a bunch of all kinds of thoughts to get out. Still, she understood that she was powerless here now. But before that she had overcome the most terrible situations on her own. Suddenly, she saw a silhouette not far away. But the sun behind him did not yet allow her to see who it was. And when the silhouette of the man came closer, Alexa could see that it was the marker of Belford. For a moment, she was even infuriated that, out of all the people she could encounter, her ex turned out to be her ex. Still, she explained to the mayor that she had been caught playing a prank by several lords. What a crew! That she had now been caught, Belford only stood and said nothing, and therefore looked like some kind of fool in her eyes. Then she directly asked him to help her get out and promised to reimburse him for his expenses, hoping that he would help. The princess saw that he had just turned away. Alexa then started yelling and realized that her hopes were in vain. Alexa then started yelling that she knew he didn't love her, but just leaving her here would be a huge mistake. She also added that no matter what, people treat her like a beast. She still goes by the surname Dwight. After the remark, Alexa loudly called Marie's name, and only then did he stop and turn back to her. Belford then asked the princess to wait a while, and immediately peeled off the branch, and Alexa decided that he would give it to her, but the Maris explained that it was only soil magic, and if the source was destroyed, the magic would dissipate. Then the princess remembered how he had said that magic would not work, and now she did not understand what was going on. Belford also explained that the trap set up here mixed several bells, and simple magic would not work. Then he held out his hand to the princess and asked her to grab on, because if she was pulled even harder, she would have to get out for a long time. Alexa still saw some kind of trick in this and tried to understand what this man was up to. She had heard before that he didn't like to touch her, and now she decided to just wait without his help. Turning away for a moment, she felt the mares grab her and quickly pull her out of the swamp. Now the girl was even more convinced that Belford was up to something and demanded that she be released. Mars realized that he had been holding it in his hands for a while, but then he put it on the ground. Alexa explained to him that such help was unnecessary and asked him to continue hunting. At that moment she heard Marie's voice, who was trying to understand what had happened. The girl was even a little frightened by the surprise and simply shouted his name. Then she explained that she was worried about him as a partner, but now she was glad that everything was fine with him. Alexa also noticed that there was no person next to the Duke who accompanied him. Balon explained that he had sent him on business, and the princess immediately suggested that she could find out where he was. She believed that it would not be good if something happened to one of the partners after waiting for Alexa to pause the Duke. Alexa turned to the porter as something had happened to the princess at that moment. Belford came up to him and gave me some training back, greeted him rather rudely. The girl noticed the tension in the air. She immediately began to explain to the Duke that she had fallen into a trap that had been prepared by the other participants. Then she added that Marie had helped her out, and nothing serious had happened. The Duke then thanked Bedford, but the Marquis again grumbled rudely that he did not need such thanks, and Alexa decided that she should thank the Saviour, which she immediately did after that. Balon said that he saw a stream by the road along which he was walking and suggested that the girl go wash. He also decided to show her the way, and Alexa followed him, wishing the Marquis a successful hunt on the way. The princess mentally scolded herself for getting into such a stupid situation, and even left her bow there. But when she refreshed herself with the cool water from the stream, she even felt a surge of energy, and this comforted her. The Duke was waiting for her at this time. Turning his back and asking if she had hurt herself, the girl assured him that she was fine, admitting that she had lost her sword, and then she noticed that the arrow was also missing. Balon thought, was she out again? Nilda tried to piece together a puzzled memory. That she had dropped it into the river, and immediately decided to help find the arrow. Alexa noticed this and asked him to stop as it was very slippery at the place where he was going to step. But it was too late, and he lost his balance and flew straight at her. But the princess caught him, and they fell into the water. The situation seemed awkward to the girl, and she immediately stepped back, apologizing, and asking if the Duke was okay. He admitted that everything was fine, thanks to the fact that she caught him. But Alexia understood that it looked rather stupid at the same time. She wondered why she always wanted to show herself in front of Balon, only from the good side. But if she was embarrassed again now and ran away, the Duke would misunderstand her again, and she did not want any misunderstandings then. She decided to admit that at their first meeting she looked stupid because she was embarrassed. Only the Duke did not understand why she decided to remember the past, because there are so many people who do not like it. He knew that it was unpleasant to face him, so he knew that the princess was embarrassed then. But he didn't pay attention to that, because it's normal for people to be embarrassed, and Alexa thanked him, though she knew that what was normal for humans, for a monster and a damned man, was a ridiculous consolation. The girl also praised him for rushing into the water for an arrow, while he can console people with harsh words. He also admitted that if you look closely, you can't take your eyes off him, and the Duke remembered that she recently called him Balon. The princess was embarrassed again and admitted that she was just so happy to see him, so she couldn't restrain herself. But the Duke did not mind at all. He even liked that she called him that, and this was also unexpected for Alexa, for the sake of fairness. She also asked Balon to call her by her first name as well. Then she gave him her hand, inviting him to get out of the water, as if he was going to sit there all day. The Duke gave her his hand and thanked her, calling her by her first name as well, and she noticed that he smiled slightly. Then Balon noticed that the clothes were very wet, and it would take a long time before they dried. The princess then realized that, because of her, it was inconvenient for him to take off his clothes to dry, and immediately turned away. She even closed her eyes, and, explaining that she was not looking, offered him to take off and dry his clothes. Alexa also admitted that for the sake of her partner she can wait and will never turn around so as not to embarrass him. But in just a second, his clothes were already dry, and the princess thought that he knew how to use magic. Balon confirmed this and explained that because he had a demon blood in him, he just didn't want to tell it the Duke knew. That if he had only hinted, Alexia would have been suspicious. Now the girl realized that behind his eyes there was fatigue and loneliness, and there was not a single emotion left. There were only traces of countless condemnations and distrust, and both of them were so similar and different at the same time. They would only wish he had a reminder of the emotions one had to share, and they scarcely ever did. Alexa fought incessantly to change, but Belle was afraid to change and continued to kill himself. She also understood that she was already precious by her existence alone, just like the Duke. And at this time, he noticed that today was such a good day that even his eyes were blinding afterwards. They moved on, and Alexa realized that the hunt had failed. Because of her? But the Duke said that it was enough that they were both unharmed. But the princess still did not want to come empty-handed, because this was a chance to see the wrinkled face of the king. She also understood that she was only getting help from the Duke under the pretext of a partner, and offered to treat him to tea later. As she chatted with him little by little, Alexa realized that talking to him was easier than she had thought. Contrary to expectations, Balon turned out to be a talented storyteller and easily conversed on any topic. Also, the Duke did not believe in stereotypes about monsters and demons, and the girl understood that he had become her good friend. Suddenly, she noticed that something was flying at them, and immediately pushed Balon away so that he would not be hit when the object approached. They saw that it was a winged ball with a huge number of teeth, like a small monster. Alexa was not at a loss and immediately cut it with her second sword, but this monster was not the only one. The Duke noticed another one and took out an arrow and, taking aim, immediately pierced the ill-wisher. Both of them were now sure that they were monsters, and Balon asked the princess to hide in the forest because they flew only to the Duke also, realizing that there were a lot more of them than he thought, and asked Alexa to hide again. Only the girl was not going to hide, and understood that if there were a lot of monsters then it was also dangerous, in the main hall. At the same time, she did not understand why there were no knights anywhere, and suggested that she go to this hall and check. Balon whistled, and immediately a horse ran up to him, on which he asked his partner to go. He also suggested that she take his sword, as he has other weapons, so he would be fine. The girl promised to return quickly and asked the Duke to take care of herself, and after saying goodbye she set off, left alone. Balon went to scout the stop, intending to destroy as many monsters as possible. At the same time, he thought about the fact that his partner Alexa is a very strong person, and not because she is a monster. She was strong in heart and soul, and so he believed that she would definitely return to him for the time being. he would do everything that depends on him, and is ready to exterminate the winged toothfish at this time. Other knights fought with the same monsters, trying to lead them away from the troops, to carry away the wounded monsters, attacked from all sides. And the knights were even scared, but the Marquis shouted not to surrender the vice-captain of the royal knights. Guyon also ordered to find His Majesty, as they needed reinforcements, but it was explained to him that it was too late, because as soon as the monsters attacked, His Majesty left the hunting ground. Then the knights again used their weapons against the monsters, but it seemed that the arrows did not take them at all. Then the captain ordered that they had to evacuate immediately, and believed that the king had not left them the palace grounds, and that the battle was pointless, but that he had to do something for the soldiers who were following him. But only at the same time. Belford did not know what to do in such a situation, and while he was thinking, he did not notice an attack from behind. The vice-captain immediately shouted at him about the danger and also rushed to slay the attacking monster, but at the same time, he suddenly saw an arrow flying at the monster, which could also hit the mares. However, the arrow only pierced the monster, and then Belford and Guyon saw Alexa approaching them. The girl also began to shout to the Maris to pull himself together, because they were on the battlefield. The other knights who heard her voice immediately turned around, not understanding how the princess ended up there, and at this time it seemed to the Marquis that this girl again looked like a monster on the battlefield. After that, Alexa shouted to everyone that she was grateful to them for their desire to fight to the very end. But she also cannot say that the tactics they had chosen were correct, and she guessed that they would not succeed this way. Durin shouted back that his men were doing their best and that it was not the fault of any tactic, but then the Marquis came up to him and asked him to stop being indignant and offered to listen to Alexa. Then the girl admitted that she understood the principle on which monsters attacked, and was asked to transfer command to her Guyon, still did not understand how she could ask for such a thing at a time when the lives of all the soldiers were in danger. Alexa explained that even if they threw the monsters away, they would still keep coming. These creatures move according to the same scheme from east to west, and vice versa, and thereby create chaos. More and more of them arrive, and they can group together, becoming one huge monster. She must learn everything, because in this world she can only trust herself, and so she did. Alexa saw that it was difficult for the Marquis to make a decision, and so the commander-in-chief of the royal army ordered the people to split up. Guyon was surprised at her words, for she was not the commander-in-chief, but she looked like that. It was only a nickname they had come up with. But despite that, the captain had to obey, and while the Marquis continued to think Guyon himself ordered the soldiers to obey the commander-in-chief, then Alexa ordered the 1st and 2nd companies to go west, the 3rd and 4th to the east, and the 5th to go with her. She added that they are not fighting to protect the royal family, but to protect those they love. King Raphael III fled the battlefield during the invasion of monsters, and in this he was not much different from the rest of the kings. Although he was 3rd in line to the throne, he became king through Internos War. The 1st Prince Alexis and the 2nd Prince Fron died in the struggle for the throne, and this is how Raphael became the ruler. But it was also impossible to say that this place suited him, because Chancellor Ivan's car was in charge of the affairs of the nobility. The kingdom was protected from invasion by Elle and the royal knights. So, doubts arose about the existing candidate for the throne. Prince William, a member of the royal blood, and the Archduke, and the bearer of the devil's blood did not get along with each other. And now that the knights were fighting the critters, a huge dragon also appeared. Guyon was even frightened, and Alexa ordered everyone to gather, and then she rushed at the dragon and cut off its head with one blow. This girl was different from her usual relatives, and she had the strength of an archduke, and the courage of 200 knights. Now she shouted to Guyon that she had not given him the order to die and demanded that he get up and fight the vice-captain. Knew that Alexa might have been a monster all along, but now she was leading them forward. He had obeyed her orders, and now he was sure that this was the girl who deserved the royal crown. Soon another huge monster appeared behind the dragon, which looked like a vampire bear. The knights, although they were brave soldiers, could not hide how scared they were. But then they saw that this monster had also been slain. And when its carcass fell, everyone saw the Archduke of Balon, and all the next monsters that appeared also met with the Duke's sword, which fought with all its might. The knights noticed his skills as amazing, and they were completely different from theirs, and when it seemed that everything was almost over, Alexa decided that all that remained was to clean up, but then another monster appeared behind her, and as she turned around to fight the Duke, attacked it as well. While Balon was wiping his face after that, the Marquis appeared next to the princess with his anxiety. And at that moment, she even managed to dream of looking at the Duke, and now Belford spoiled the whole atmosphere for her. At the same time, she thought best to say nothing. She also did not understand why he immediately became so kind and immediately pushed him away from the phone. Marcus explained that he was only trying to protect her, but she said that she could do it herself, in addition. She understands the battlefield more than anyone else, and Belford did not understand why Alexa reacted this way now in any case. They had defeated all the monsters, and all the knights were now praising the Commander-in-Chief and Captain Belford, and while the others were rejoicing, the Duke only asked if everything was all right with the princess, and if she had hurt herself, the girl assured her that everything was fine with her, while she understood that the Duke came later, but did much more. And she was even offended that all the laurels would go to the Marquis, because people do not recognize help from someone who has demonic blood. Then she turned to the Marquis of Belford and asked why he did not know how to give thanks. After all, she was more than sure that another person deserved gratitude for this fight. Now she understood what saving people's lives meant to them. But then the knights began to fuss, and realized that Balon had done a lot. They realized that if it were not for him, they would have been swept away and they would all have died. With his help, they were able to defend themselves. From the next moment, there were shouts of "Praise!" addressed to the Duke, and everyone wished him a long life. Balon was even embarrassed and explained to the princess that she should not have done this, but she objected soon after. Then, they were restored to Kingdom Come. Also suggested that they return to the palace, since they were done here. However, the Marquis decided that he would not return, and also admitted that everyone had done a good job today. The Duke then seated the princess in his saddle, and then she felt that her heart was beating very hard. Balon also wondered why she had agreed to leave with him, as she could have stayed and celebrated with the soldiers, but Alexia understood that although they won, many lives were still lost. Therefore she sees no reason to be happy but for herself. She understood that now. She was lying to herself and him. On the way they met M, who was a servant of the Duke, and Belcon wondered why he was in such a place. He confessed that Solivian had sent him, and noticing the princess, he decided that the two were on a date. The Duke felt a little ashamed in front of the princess, and explained that his servant was not trained in manners at all, but the girl assured that everything was fine, because M was still too young. At the same time, very cute, and she forgave him at this moment. The boy also noticed that his master smelled strange, not at all like usual. Lydia immediately assumed that this smell could have come from the blood of monsters, although she did not feel any smell, and the boy assured that the smell was unpleasant, and then boldly rummaged through the master's belongings and found a small bag there. The girl was very surprised because she did not even notice him, and began to ask M if he knew what it was. The servant explained that this bag contained a mixture of herbs that are very attractive to monsters, They create a strong aroma that monsters can feel for kilometers. And if a person has it, then he will be in trouble. Now, Alexa began to guess why her heart was beating so strongly. Apparently, she was still the same monster at heart, but the princess also did not understand why such a bag ended up in the Duke's possession, and thought that he knew about the properties of these herbs. Balon did not know what to answer. The girl did not know what to answer the girl, and she even began to scold him for keeping silent. Alexa demanded an explanation as to why the Duke had hidden it from her, much less why he had gone hunting with the pouch. He still couldn't find the words to answer. And now the princess was even a little angry with him for it. Then she said that she could not trust a person who was up to something behind her back. In her heart, she was also unbearable. That it seemed to her that they had become closer, and now it came out that it seemed to her that Balon reminded her of her past, and she decided to soften her tone. She only explained to the Duke that he could remain silent, but that was the end of their conversation. And then she said goodbye to him. There was a time indeed for further discussion. Such days come, and not since the days of my marriage. Balon did not want to let go of the princess and instinctively grabbed her hand, asking her to wait. He also admitted that he could tell her everything just so that she would not be angry with him. Alexei agreed, and then the Duke explained that he was worried about her safety. He also asked her to answer who she would go hunting with if she did not choose he or he did not take part. To the girl, such an answer seemed silly but honest. But now everything fell into place for the princess. She really saw Duke Li as Hanbal, who went out of her way for someone's love. Then Alexia admitted that she did not want him to get hurt, even though they had only recently met. She also admitted that Balon was important to her, and she spoke these words from the heart. Oh, suddenly the girl's face changed abruptly and said that they also simply had to take revenge on that scoundrel. The Duke agreed and the princess smiled again, and then asked him to accompany her to the castle. A lot of time has passed since. Alexa came to this world and she began to understand that she would not return to her world, but despite everything, now she felt happy, and she was even pleased with it after all. You will no longer have to experience problems with work and rush during your lunch break. You don't have to be an outcast because of your poverty and be disgusted with love and your friendship. Now she is just afraid that all this may turn out to be a dream, or that suddenly the real Alexa will return. What if she forced her to get everything back? But the girl did it all on her own, and the real Alexa missed her chance. And the reborn one now doesn't care that she is called a monster. Now, she is a real monster herself. But even so, she has avenged the former princess a little. Then she hears Lily's maid calling her, and immediately calls her, asking what was wrong. But she was just worried because the mistress suddenly disappeared somewhere. And Alexa explained that she was just thinking when Lily admitted that there was news about the seller, about whom the mistress had asked some time ago. The maid was able to find him and explained that he was a wandering merchant, and now Lily had already left their kingdom. The princess understood that it would not be easy to find him because he could be anywhere. Lily also wondered why the lady needed this seller, suggesting that she did not like the bag. Alexa actually wanted to find Sunny's cellar for Belcon, but she wouldn't admit it to the maid afterwards. Lily also confessed that the king had sent another man, although she had said that the lady needed to rest. But the princess guessed why, because the king's escape from the hunting competition caused popular unrest. It was now clear that someone was going to overthrow the king, and that man would not miss such an opportunity. This man, Stephen, is the head of the aristocracy, and he also supports Alexa as the commander-in-chief of Philippe's army, and since the princess is connected to this situation, King Raphael can't help but pay attention to it. 5 or 6 times the girl had managed to avoid this meeting, and she was beginning to get tired of it, This time she was about to go explain to Lily that it was not polite of her to avoid him all the time. After a while, Alexa, wearing one of the beautiful dresses, arrived at the palace. She had to feel his warmth trickling through the fabric, and went to the meeting. The king was a little agitated at the sight of her, but he greeted her without showing any sign of excitement. The princess bowed back to him, and she didn't understand why His Majesty was acting like they were so close. In the meantime, he even approached her and asked her how she felt, like a very loving father. She admitted that she was better, and at that moment Duke Felipe Manuel and the Count Gerard Abigail also entered the hall. Alexa could not believe her eyes that she had met the most loyal people to the state. At the same time, the king admitted that, thanks to her, they managed to protect the kingdom and the princess. At this time, wanted to hit him, because he was the first to run away from the hunting competition. However, she restrained herself and decided to see what would happen next, while saying that, not only thanks to her, but also to the Duke of Balkan, she recalled that the king had entrusted her, the Archduke and the soldiers with an entire state, and then asked why he had fled. Alexia mockingly suggested that he had done it for the honour of the royal family, or had taken himself. Raphael responded by acknowledging his gratitude to the Duke, but the girl got tired of it, and she began to ask directly why he had summoned her. The king then explained that monsters had reappeared on the western border, and he sent troops there, but to no avail. The lords needed help, but no one can help them, and now they are in serious trouble. Then Raphael put a smile on his face and added that they needed her, and she was their last hope after all. As always, Alexia is obliged to protect the kingdom, but this time she was in no hurry to agree. Now the girl already knew how to manipulate people. It was the former princess who lacked attention after all. Abandoned by her family, she just lived the life of a lonely child, and therefore she would not resist such words. While the girl was thinking about this, her attention was returned by the king. Wondering why she was silent, and then he suddenly declared that he had missed an important detail. "Lady Penn," he said, and added that the Marquis of Belford would also be there. Raphael explained that they would be there together for a month or two, and then remembered that the Marquis was now in session. He also allowed Alexa to go for the time being, but she asked to explain why His Majesty mentioned the Marquis in their conversation. The girl also recalled that she officially broke off the engagement, and by the next day the Marquis would be broaching for their meetings with Marquis Town later on. This means that she does not need this person. The king then suggested that if they spent some time together, Belford might change his mind. Raphael also noticed that the princess had changed recently and asked not to miss the opportunity to improve relations with the Marquis. But Alexa refused and explained that she was not going to follow His Majesty's order. He could not understand what the girl meant and assumed that she had health problems. He also asked the princess to stop complaining that she didn't like something and demanded a reason for the refusal. At this moment, Alexa became convinced that when something did not go according to the king's plan, he began to show his true colours. But now she needed to come up with a suitable answer, and she stated that she had lost her magic. For now, the princess explained that the king's order had once been an honour to her, and she also thought that she would forever remain a monster. But now that the girl has got rid of the curse, she just wanted to truly fall in love and live happily. Alexis also reminded the Majesty, that he had always felt sorry for her. And though she claimed to worship, for all that she was still his daughter, she also understood that his parental heart wanted only the best for her. But she was no longer a monster. Now she was a normal person, like everyone else, and she still does not want to see her ex-fiancé anymore. The princess also explained that she no longer wanted to get into awkward situations, and the king only again reminded her that the Marquis could change his mind. Alexia was already tired of hearing the same thing, and now she was already angry and even yelled at her father, repeating that she did not want to see Belford. After, she asked if His Majesty noticed how the Marquis treated her, but he decided that his daughter had misunderstood everything. The king also promised the princess that he would definitely have a serious talk with her ex-fiancé. But the girl only repeated once again that she did not even want to hear anything about this man. She was tired of it, and she hated the Marquis's face. No one could imagine how much she hated him. This time, it was Raphael who got angry, telling his daughter that she was beginning to cross the boundaries. When he noticed that it didn't work on Alexa anyway, he decided to offer another option to the king, promised her to introduce her to any aristocrat, Felipe, if she agreed to his request. But the princess said that this would not change her decision anyway, and he no longer had the strength to argue or be surprised. Then Alexa also explained that true love should come suddenly, like in a fairy tale, and she will wait for her fate. The girl also wondered if her father would support her in this, realizing that he no longer had any arguments. His Majesty Raphael did agree with her, and his faithful servants could not believe it. The princess had already forgotten about them and then demanded that they explain why they were interfering in her conversation with the king. The two began to explain that they must protect Felipe at all costs, and he reminded her that she could not abandon the state. Then Alexa demanded that they remember when she had ever betrayed the state. She called them shameless, and declared that they had no sense at all if they dared to say such a thing. The princess also recalled that, while she slept in warm rooms, she fought monsters on the verge of life and death. Aristocrats went to banquets, while she risked her own life for the count and the Cavillas. Duke began to make excuses that Alexa had superhuman strength, but Alexa again objected that she was no longer a monster. The girl was angry that they always counted only on her, and advised them to go and cope on their own. Manuel thought the princess was strange today, and he asked her to calm down and talk calmly. He does not know the subcomplexity of the war, but at the same time Alexa has always listened to them before, and now she has changed, but she said again that they did not understand their guilt, and that she had just got rid of the curse. They also sent her to war again, although they are not ready to take responsibility if she does not meet her love Duke Manuel. Manuel assures her that she had nothing to worry about, and he remembered how much she had done for the state. He also had no doubt that the princess would be able to find a worthy person for herself. Now Alexia was beginning to realize that she was being given the opportunity to choose anyone, and Manuel confirmed it. He had promised that all people would obey her, and she liked it, but she suspected that something was wrong. And then she announced that she was choosing the son of this duke, from which he was immediately shocked, not believing his ears. But the princess explained that he did not show himself badly in hunting competitions, so she decided to choose him the duke. Even turned pale, and began to persuade them that his son was not good enough for her. Only Alexa objected, because no one is born great, especially since she likes people like that boy. Hearing this, the king was ready to agree, but Duke Manuel did not want to do this in any way, and asked the count for help, and then Gerard Abigail suggested that the girl solve this issue differently, since such a choice looked selfish. He asked her to understand how dangerous this could be for the kingdom, because she was just doing a favor. But Alexa got angry again, and called these two aristocrats arrogant, and they don't dare call her selfish. Their state now rests on the shoulders of a girl, and this indicated that their country was very fragile. She also demanded that they explain what they are doing here, and that if they want to do something for the country, they must also work. The king saw his daughter disperse and begged her to calm down, explaining that they were merely giving her useful advice, But Alexa did not consider it advice and also reproached her father for ignoring her all the time. She also said that these people are a huge problem because they are just powdering His Majesty's brains, the Count. And the Duke immediately fell down before the princess and began to apologize, admitting that they had made a mistake. Raphael also began to explain to his daughter that these people were residents of the country and they were useful if something terrible happened. Then Alexa began to ask why he called her, if he was so sure of these aristocrats, and the king declared that he was only afraid that she would renounce them, asked her to understand his feelings. After that, the girl decided to pretend that she calmed down, while adding that they should not forget that she was watching them. The Count and Duke trembled in fear of her anger, but promised that they would remember her instruction and obey her after that. Alexia decided that it was time for her to leave, but the king wondered what to do with the monsters. He explained that no one else had such talent as she did, and asked his daughter to help them one last time. The princess was silent for a couple of seconds, and then agreed, but at the same time stated that she had one condition. Alexia admitted that her selfish behavior was very dangerous for Felipe, and that the well-being of the kingdom was a small price to pay for battles. The girl also had no incentive to fight, and was sent to bed. Now she demanded a generous payment for her services. Raphael didn't quite understand what she meant, and then Elle explained that she wanted to get paid for the work done. Earl Gerard was surprised at this wish, and the king also reminded her that it was her duty to the country and not a business deal. But the princess did not want to listen. She often remembers the past, and now she wants gratitude. She also reminded her father that money is the best gratitude, so she decided that she should be paid if her work is appreciated. Then the aristocracy will understand its significance. And for one monster she now requires 2,000 gold coins, and in wars each monster will be counted separately at the same time. She stomped her foot so much that cracks appeared in the floor, and said that she would not be so kind next year. The frightened Count and the Duke admitted that they understood her, and now considered it a reasonable decision. Then the king also agreed, and the girl again decided that it was time for her to leave, saying that she would send the bill for the hunting competitions. Raphael did not expect this, and Alexa added that if there were any questions, she would meet him in person. When she left, Raphael thought about the price, because 2,000 is the annual salary of one soldier, and demanding much money for just one monster is almost the same as refusing to follow an order of last year, for example. Raphael realized that his daughter was blackmailing him, but he could not believe that she could be so smart. His Majesty did not understand what was happening now, and why things were not doing as planned. After a while, Princess Alexa dozed off in the garden and, in her sleep, heard someone calling her name. Slowly, she opened her eyes, and upon seeing Duke Balon in front of her, she immediately jolted awake, startled and still half asleep. Confused, she tried to understand why the Duke was there and how he knew where to find her. Balon explained that he had only just arrived and that the maids had told him the princess liked to spend time in the garden. He also noted that she seemed exhausted, but Alexa assured him she was fine, just tired from staying up late the night before. In truth, Alexa had been in a duel with Lord Eisenhower the previous night, but she didn't want to reveal this to her guest. Instead, she invited the Duke to continue their conversation at the tea table and led him to the gazebo. As they walked, Alexa asked why Balon had arrived so early, given that they were scheduled to meet later in the afternoon. Balon admitted that the king had summoned him to the capital, and Alexa guessed it had something to do with killing the monsters. Balon hesitated before confirming that Prince Wilhelm would handle the monsters. Alexa, slightly worried, remarked that Wilhelm was as stingy as their father. She asked for more details, suspecting that her father was trying to solve the situation by any means necessary. Balon explained that he had refused to participate in the war because he no longer had any official duties, and Alexa sympathized with his decision. She asked when he planned to leave, but Balon remained silent. Noticing her disappointment, he mentioned that he intended to stay in the capital for a while, which made Alexa feel happy, though she quickly composed herself. Curious, Alexa asked why Balon had decided to stay, and he responded with an unexpected answer. He liked the flowers in the garden and wanted to admire them further. His response caught Alexa off guard, and she stared at him, bewildered. The Duke, known for his stoic demeanor, didn't seem the type to appreciate flowers. Nevertheless, she offered to show him the royal garden, suggesting that they didn't need to go immediately if he was busy. However, Balon assured her he wasn't, and he'd love to see the irises in bloom. Alexa's heart fluttered, and a blush crept onto her cheeks, but she tried to keep her feelings in check. As they walked through the garden, Alexa asked what his favorite flower was. Balon admitted he didn't know, as he wasn't familiar with their names. This answer relieved Alexa, who began explaining that most of the flowers in the garden came from distant regions. She had heard that they were difficult to cultivate because they were so unfamiliar. Alexa paused, deep in thought, and Balon noticed her introspective expression, becoming slightly concerned. She realized that the foreign flowers mirrored her own sense of alienation. Just as the flowers struggled to adapt, she too felt like an outsider in this world. Balon interrupted her reverie by gently taking her hand, apologizing for his earlier comments about the garden, and offering to make it up to her by taking her to a festival in the capital. Alexa was momentarily flustered, unsure if he was asking her on a date, but she quickly agreed, admitting she would gladly attend. At that moment, her sister, Princess Ariel, appeared, greeting Alexa with a smile. Ariel mentioned that she had planned to visit because she heard Alexa was unwell. Though Alexa insisted she was much better now, she couldn't help but note that her sister hadn't been in any particular hurry to see her. Ariel then expressed surprise at seeing Duke Balon with her sister, commenting that she hadn't expected him to still be in the capital. Balon greeted Ariel politely, while Ariel's servant, Giselle, reminded Alexa to address the Duke by his title, even though she was of royal blood. Alexa found Giselle's interference annoying and cowardly, especially since she only seemed brave around Ariel. However, Balon quickly diffused the tension by explaining that he had specifically asked Alexa to call him by his name. Giselle promptly apologized to Alexa for her rude remark. Ariel then apologized on her maid's behalf, offering tea as a gesture of reconciliation, but Balon declined, saying the apology should be directed toward Alexa, not him. Ariel found it unusual that Alexa and Balon addressed each other by their first names, and realized they had grown much closer. She remarked that she was happy for her sister, as she had worried about her being alone in the palace without friends. Alexa recognized this as another veiled insult, meant to make her seem pitiful. Ariel went on to say that she was pleased with their friendship, even admitting she was a bit jealous. This comment struck a nerve with Alexa, and she fought to keep her patience in check. Ariel invited them to join her tea party, but Balon politely refused, saying he had other matters to attend to. He offered to escort Alexa back to the palace, and she agreed, though she hadn't expected the conversation to end so abruptly. As they left, Ariel watched them with a mix of confusion and irritation, while Balon led Alexa away, walking at a quick pace. Sensing that he was in a hurry, Alexa tried to keep up, but then Balon slowed down, surprising her. He picked the most beautiful rose from a nearby bush and gently placed it in her hair, telling her that he always had time for her. Alas! The gesture made Alexa's heart race, and she shyly agreed that the rose was beautiful. The next day, Alexa met Ariel again for tea. Ariel offered her cookies, recalling that her sister loved them, and Alexa thanked her. Ariel asked how things had gone with the Duke, and Alexa reassured her that she had behaved appropriately, so there was nothing to worry about. Though Alexa was keenly aware that Ariel had likely orchestrated their encounter the previous day. Ariel pressed on, asking about the details of their conversation, and Alexa nonchalantly mentioned that they had discussed attending the Festival of Abundance together. Ariel, visibly displeased, told Alexa that she couldn't attend the festival with BEAU, explaining that the royal family was required to host the celebration, and Alexa, being part of the family, had to participate. Though Alexa knew she didn't need her sister's permission, she chose not to argue. Instead, she quietly sipped her tea, resolving that no matter what, she wouldn't let her sister stand in her way. Newmanhwa says, during her childhood, Alexa had always been secretive about her plans with Balon, and even now, she didn't want anyone else to know. She reminded herself how Ariel hadn't told her about her relationship with the Maras of Belford, and similarly, Alexa decided to keep this information to herself. Afterward, the second princess advised Ariel not to waste time on her, but to spend it with the Marquis. At that moment, Ariel's expression was hard to read. Was she happy or on the verge of tears? Later, Alexa went to meet the Duke alone, which surprised him. He expressed concern for her safety and insisted that a servant accompany her next time. However, Alexa didn't feel like someone who needed help, which slightly upset Balon, as he hadn't meant to offend her. She assured him she was fine and suggested they get moving if they wanted to see everything at the festival. Alexa couldn't quite believe that she was attending her first festival with Balon by her side. As they wandered through the bustling streets, Alexa noticed skewered chicken and honey treats being offered, which she wanted to try. The Duke, worried she might get lost, tried to stop her, but Alexa insisted that she wasn't a child. She found it endearing that Balon worried about her. Teasingly, she reminded him that she was a monster after all, so he needn't worry so much. Just then, she heard sweets being advertised, her favourite, and wanted to taste them. Understanding she wouldn't be deterred, Balon gave in and let her go. Alexa was touched by his concern, finding him so endearing that her heart fluttered. She noticed how much she enjoyed being around him, though she hesitated to spoil the moment with words. As they walked, Balon handed her a sweet snack, which seemed to appear out of nowhere. When Alexa asked how he got it so quickly, he explained that the crowd let him skip ahead. Amused, Alexa teased him for his untouchable status and offered to share the snack with him. At first, Balon declined, saying he wasn't hungry, but Alexa playfully insisted, and he finally agreed to let her feed him. She was charmed by how adorable he looked at that moment. Balon admitted he didn't like sweets, but he didn't mind indulging her this time. Alexa, surprised, confessed that she had only been joking, but Balon reassured her that he didn't mind. In turn, he fed her some of the snack, which tasted like heaven to her. As they continued walking, the area seemed to change. Balon warned her that they were near the mercenaries and guilds, so they should stay alert. Alexa spotted yogurt nearby and immediately craved it. Balon offered to get some, leaving her alone for a moment. While waiting, Alexa noticed a nearby stall selling intriguing items. One small oblong object caught her eye. When she inquired about it, the old saleswoman told her it was a pen, but hinted that it wasn't ordinary. Ignoring the warning, Alexa decided to buy it. Just as she made her choice, a young man named Killian Urgin interrupted, claiming he would buy the pen at any price. Alexa, irritated by his arrogance, asked who he was and why she should give it up. Killian, without missing a beat, snatched the pen from her. Angry, Alexa grabbed his hand, trying to take it back, insisting she had seen it first. Killian smugly pointed out that she hadn't paid for it yet, so it wasn't hers. Alexa tightened her grip, making Killian wince, but she maintained an air of innocence, claiming to be a fragile lady. Frustrated, Killian called her a crazy, monstrously strong fool, which only made Alexa angrier. Just then, Killian's father, Count Eren, intervened, scolding his son for causing trouble at the festival. Killian complained that Alexa had tried to break his wrist, which led to more insults. Balon returned at this moment and, seeing the commotion, asked Alexa to calm down. The princess explained the situation, referring to Killian as an annoying fly. Count Eren apologized to Balon for the trouble, and the Duke revealed that the pen Alexa had wanted was cursed. Startled, Alexa listened as Balon explained the curse. Anyone who touched the pen would lose their magical powers. Killian explained that he had only been trying to prevent her from losing her magic, though she had assumed he was just being rude. Alexa realized she had been unaware of the curse, and when she turned to confront the saleswoman, she had already disappeared. Killian reassured her that she shouldn't have lost much magic, but urged her to be more cautious in the future. The Duke asked Alexa to be more reasonable when buying mysterious objects, and to prove a point, he crushed the pen in his hand. As they left, Killian glared at Balon, sensing the Duke's disapproval. As they continued walking, Balon explained that cursed objects had no effect on him because of his demonic heritage. Alexa found it ironic that the two of them, a demon-born duke and a monster princess, had found each other. She realized that they saw parts of themselves in one another, and that's why they shared such a strong connection. After the tense encounter, Alexa joked about her earlier craving for yogurt, which Balon had forgotten in the commotion. They laughed it off, and Alexa suggested they continue exploring the festival. The princess realized that since His Majesty knew about her outing, Ariel must have been involved. The king continued, stating that Alexia should remain in the palace and accompany the delegation from Elle. He also demanded that she fulfill her duties for the benefit of herself and her assigned companion. At this point, Ariel stepped in, assuring their father that her sister would reflect on her actions. The king decided to end the discussion, but promised he would keep a close watch on Alexa. Ariel could see that her sister was furious, knowing it was because she had informed their father about Alexa's walk. The first princess admitted she did so out of concern, not only because Alexa was unfamiliar with the capital, but also because she was spending time with the Duke. After all, even though he was part of the royal family, he was still a demon, one known for his cruelty. Alexa, however, dismissed Ariel's concerns, reminding her that she was the one who had first invited him for tea. The second princess, growing tired of the conversation, expressed that she had exhausted her trust in her sister. Ariel, now frustrated, accused Ariel of lying, explaining that this was not a matter of trust, but of the Duke's importance to her. She pointed out that Alexa cared for him enough to obey the king's will for his sake. The eldest princess didn't understand why the Duke mattered so much to Alexa. Irritated, Alexa retorted that she didn't expect her sister to be upset by this. Ariel demanded an answer once more, but Alexa cryptically replied that Ariel already knew. She added that, in a palace filled with cruel and selfish people, the Duke was the only one who ever took her side. Alexa warned that if Ariel continued to act this way, she would only drive them further apart. The second princess, hurt, began to leave, despite her sister's plea to stay and talk things through. A few days later, an unexpected guest arrived at Alexa's residence, Count Eugen. Though surprised, Alexa went to meet him. During their conversation, the Count expressed relief that Alexa was doing well and apologized for not meeting her earlier. Alexa coldly remarked that he must have been busy with family matters. Eugen, ignoring her tone, mentioned that he had heard rumors about her accompanying the delegation from Ariel. Alexa was surprised by how fast rumors spread, and her uncle, inquired about her preparations. Alexa admitted that she found state affairs more challenging than she had anticipated. She suspected that the royal family had assigned her this duty to torment her, knowing how difficult it would be. She explained that news of the delegation's infamous reputation had only reached her now, but she was well aware of their arrogance and disdain for her kingdom. Handling the Elean delegation was like managing a ticking time bomb. A single misstep could invoke the wrath of the royal family. To her surprise, Count Uragin offered his help, recognizing the complexity of dealing with Elle. His organization, he explained, could provide her with the resources and training she needed in politics, etiquette, and diplomacy. Alexia understood that her uncle wanted something in return, so she asked him directly about his intentions. The Count, impressed by her business-like approach, explained that he hoped Alexa would help secure the Urgin family's political standing. He wanted her to represent their family and restore their prominence, which had faded since her mother's death. Alexa, hesitant, pointed out that unlike her sister, she lacked the power and political influence to make a significant difference. But Urgin assured her it wasn't about power. He wanted her to stop living in the shadows. He reminded her of the hardships she had faced, losing her mother, being exiled to the palace, and living an isolated life. Urgin believed that Alexa had become a victim of circumstance, and that she needed to reclaim her agency. The princess, still confused by his intentions, asked what exactly he wanted her to do. Urgin explained that he wanted her to represent the Urgin family, re-establishing their place in society. Alexa, shocked, learned more about her mother's tragic past. Urgin revealed that after her mother's death, the Urgin family had been ostracized due to rumors that had labeled them as the family of a concubine who had taken her own life. Alexa was devastated by the revelation, as she had never known the full truth about her mother's death. She suspected that someone in the royal family had spread the rumors to undermine their status. Curious, Alexa asked if the royal family, specifically King Raphael, was behind these events. Urgin cautioned her against speaking ill of the monarch, but Alexa persisted. She realized that her uncle sought revenge against the royal family and wanted to use her to achieve it. He confirmed this, explaining that their family's future depended on her ability to navigate the political landscape. Despite her reservations, Alexa knew that Uragin was right. The royal family would continue to tighten their grip on her. She reluctantly agreed to his plan, understanding that she could no longer avoid this conflict. Uragin assured her that the Uragin family would support her, but Alexa knew that if they failed, they would lose everything. As they parted ways, Alexa remained lost in thought. She realized that she could no longer live a quiet, peaceful life. The stakes were too high, and her role in the royal game had already been set. However, she couldn't shake her doubts. Doubts about whether she was ready to face the challenges ahead. Later, as she walked through the palace gardens to clear her mind, the Duke of Balon approached her quietly.